Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Attention, does it?
Hi, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Rosemary Lachance, a Reiki energy healer and a spiritual development advisor.
And I'm Jayne Power, author, angel channeler, and owner of an organic hair salon. We are dedicated to providing you with food for thought information and answers to all modalities of alternative healing, spiritual development and animal welfare, environmental concerns, and so much more, in the form of guest speakers who are experts in their field. We ask you to embrace the show with an open mind. We will give you our contact information at the end of the show. Please enjoy the show. And if you, we would love to hear from you if you have any show ideas. Please, send us any of the contact information.
Yeah, any interesting people you think might be good for our show. And I want to thank Henrietta, who called me and suggested someone. Thank you, Henrietta. Okay, and we have with us tonight, this is our 101 show. We have with us tonight Woody Wilkins again.
Yay!
Back with us. Welcome. I can't reach you, but
we love
we'll
Woody.
get you after. Hi.
Right. We'll send him kisses.
Nice to see you.
So you know his bio. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to read a letter from an oncology nurse practitioner that she wrote about Woody. And I think that this is really, really, really great. This is a letter of recommendation in support of Dances with Wood program, which is what Woody does. I have been aware and participated in various programs which have been sponsored by the Dances with Wood program since 2007. It's an inspirational program which allows patients and their caregivers to express themselves through woodworking. My experience with the program has been very positive, and I would recommend this for adult cancer patients and their caregivers. My experiences have included breast cancer retreat for breast cancer survivors who built a sailboat, which captured their inspirations, aspirations, and fears. Custom design workbooks are developed for each group. Another breast cancer retreat for breast cancer survivors who built a dream box, which assisted them in navigating their dreams through the cancer journey and beyond. Prostate cancer support group for patients and their caregivers who built a dream box, which assisted them in goal setting, priorities, and dreams through the cancer journey and beyond. Dances with Wood program has a significant value for adult cancer patients and their caregivers, as well as healthcare professionals. It's a therapeutic tool that promotes communication, self-esteem, creativity, but most importantly, an expressive tool which can be extremely beneficial with a life-changing event such as cancer. The program can also be utilized with the oncology healthcare professional in assisting with expression and stress reduction. I strongly support Dances with Wood and recommend its implementation in the cancer patient population, pediatric and adult, as well as the healthcare industry. That was a very nice tribute.
Nice letter.
Very, very nice. Okay. Now, on your last visit to the show, you shared with us the healing work of Dances with Wood for children. We know that you also work with adult cancer patients, and we have invited you back to share this work with our viewers. So, please tell us about your work with adult cancer patients.
Thank you, Rosemary. The aspect of how it serves adults with cancer is very similar to how it serves children with cancer. A lot of my experience has been with children over the years, and they have really helped me to see the power and the importance of creativity and empowerment. Then we attach to that certain aspects of your hopes, your dreams, and your reasons to live. And I think the thing when it comes to cancer that I've been taught well over the last 25 years is that the perceptions I have of cancer really are from my own sense of truth. And I think the key for anybody with cancer, or if you have a friend with cancer or a family member, that you need to listen for your own truth. So all I share with you tonight are simply my reflections about my experiences.
Okay.
And I think that's important to point out. This isn't a question of this is what everybody should do. It's very much a question of, excuse me, a question of listening for your own truth. And what I've done for the last 25 years is listen to the children and listen to the adults. And together they've helped to guide me with how we can really speak to health and well-being in the spirit, which as we know more than ever truly affects the body too.
Exactly. Why do you think that the Dances with Wolf program benefits women with breast cancer?
My experience with breast cancer, I think, is greatly explained by telling you some stories about actual experiences. So when you think of woodworking and breast cancer, it isn't something you usually gravitate towards. But so, for example, I worked one day in the adult oncology clinic, and there were probably about 10 or 11 patients there. I think 9 women and 2 men. And it was a fairly somber room. Patients come there for day treatments ranging from 2 to 6 hours. And so I went into the room and started to chat with a few of them, and there was a lady at the far end of the room with a friend, and she was probably in her early 40s. And I started chatting to her, and we started talking about woodworking, and she started to build a box, which was a simple box of this nature. So as she began to build, they were using the workbook as well, and my role is very much going quiet and witnessing. So they were using the workbook as well, and the friend, who was very quiet up to that point, started reading out from the workbook, and it came across a few jokes. And bit by bit, the energy in the room transformed completely. So instead of sort of 10 or 11 disconnected people, very much focused on their own sort of level of attention, there was much more of a community kind of feel. And as the jokes started being shared, people started offering jokes back. And for about an hour and a half, this process went on of building this box. And this woman was totally enthralled by it. And she shared with me that it was breast cancer, and she also shared with me that this box is for one of her daughters, her older daughter. And after about an hour and a half, the box was finished. And she was sitting there, and she looked at me, and there's this starry-eyed kind of look. And she said, "What just happened?" she said. She said, "I feel as if I haven't been in hospital for the last hour and a half." She said, "I felt free. I was free of my cancer, free of my hospital, of the hospital." She said, "What just happened?" And she was so excited about this gift now that she was able to share with the daughter.
Right.
That's
That's
nice.
an example of the creative process in a serious room that can come into the room and not only speak to the individual patient who's using it, but the energy and the warmth from that project really fills the whole room. So she walked out and she said to me on the way out, "I'd love to build another box next week for my other daughter." So about an hour later, I'm walking down the corridor of this hospital, and the hospitals are usually fairly quiet. And there was a long corridor between the cafeteria and the security desk, and there's probably 30 or 40 yards. And I'm walking down very quietly, and I hear this, "Hey, Woody!" And she stood outside the cafeteria with a box. She said, "Woody, don't forget next week the small box."
That's nice.
So that gave her something to look forward
And
to.
she walked out arm in arm with a friend. But imagine what it takes for an individual to feel so much joy and so much happiness,
Yes.
to just shout out to somebody that they see spontaneously. That's an example of how the spirit can really be transformed.
Exactly.
Now, is this something that's going to happen in the waiting room on a weekly basis? I mean, do you pick one day a week to do this, or?
It was used in a variety of different settings. The oncology clinic was one, where patients come for the day. We've also done workshops for 17 breast cancers. One of them was 17 women with breast cancer, and they came in for the day to the hospital. We had a nurse and we had a nutritionist. So together we created a special day. So the women came in, and when you come into a hospital, usually it's for a specific reason connected to your health.
Right, right.
So they walked in on this day, and there's a conference room turned into almost like a woodworking shop. And so they started building.
Yeah.
had the workbooks, they started building, started chatting, and within about 20 minutes, one of the women said to me, she said, I need to tell you, she said, I have massive reconstructive surgery coming up in about 2 weeks. She said, I've been in bed with depression for the last 6 weeks. This is the only reason I got out of bed today. She's been heavily depressed. Mm. And she was so full of joy all through the day. She was building, she was creating, she was talking to people around her, talking about her dreams. There's one example of how it transforms.
Right, takes people out of that isolation and, you know, binds them together.
That's exactly. There was another lady there who came up to me during the lunch, and she actually got hold of my arm, and she said, Woody, she said, he was wrong. Okay, so I'm waiting for the rest. She said, Woody, he was wrong. So I waited again, and she said, you know, my ex-husband of 20 years always told me I should never use tools. He was wrong. So through one creative experience, she released herself from a 20-year mental box she'd been placed in, and it was gone. She said, on my way home, I'm going to Home Depot. I would never go to Home Depot, she said. I was intimidated by it. I'm going to go there on the way home. Again, a simple example of how you provide an opportunity for somebody, and they break through that. She did that herself. You know, I provided the tools, you provide the program, the workbooks, and belief and support, and the individual then can actually release herself from it. And then there was another lady later in the afternoon. She has this beautiful sailboat. They all built this kind of project.
Yeah,
so they take some pieces of wood, and you build this wonderful boat using simple tools, hand tools, hammer, screwdrivers, and then on the sails you actually decorate your dreams.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice.
Dreams. So one lady was sitting there, and she had a scarf on her head, and she had obviously been through some extensive radiation, and she had on her sails a beautiful yellow face, a happy face, with a stick, a black hole, and a little flag. So I hovered by her sailboat, and she looked at it, looked at me, and then she shared what it was. She said, I am going back to play golf in Florida, she said. That's my dream.
Oh, that's nice.
So throughout the group, they all brought out of themselves their hopes, their dreams, things that they didn't usually talk about in hospital. And the hospital staff too, you know, the nurse had a great time too, and she was able to have conversations with these beautiful women in ways that she hasn't actually been able to have before, because they're under so much pressure. A nutritionist there, and she gave a talk for about an hour. And so the women got a lot of education from the day, embraced in a creative, empowering, supportive, fun project that they actually take away with them. So that's an example of how breast cancer and the program can actually function in a couple of different settings.
I got a question. Now, why did you choose wood as your medium?
It's what I love. It's what I used to love doing as a child.
Okay.
I think we all have something that really sparks our creativity, and for me it was wood. And then as my life journeyed through various different experiences, it began to become clear how it was going to be one day manifested into something such as Dances with Wood.
There's nothing like wood. It's alive. The spirit of it. It smells good. It feels good. It's just, I love wood. I really do. Okay. Now, not only have you worked in the field of cancer for over 25 years, but you've also been diagnosed with cancer yourself. Can you please tell us about this experience and how it has influenced your journey in life?
That's a good question. The nature of my relationship to cancer comes from my 25 years of working in the field of cancer, and also actually knowing what it's like to walk out of a doctor's office with a diagnosis. So 10 years ago, I was feeling healthy. I was feeling good. I went to the physician for a regular checkup, and he said, I'm not happy with these test results. So it's like, and my question, which may not have been a good one, I said, I want the bottom line. He said, colon cancer.
Oh.
Within 2 minutes, he said the same words. He said, I'm not happy with these test results. It's like, okay. And he said, prostate cancer.
Oh.
2 minutes later, he gave me a yellow sticky with 2 phone numbers on, and told me that these were the specialists I needed to go and see. And then I left the office, and I'm walking out of the corridor from his office down to the reception, and I'm waiting for the alarm clock to go. I was thinking, this is such a vivid dream. wow, it feels almost like it's real. But the alarm clock didn't go off. So I walked out on the street, and this was maybe 3:30 in the afternoon. And you know, in the city, you see people stood at a bus stop. They're waiting for a bus. Well, I was stood in the middle of the pavement without any bus stop, and I was stood there as if I'd just been hit by a bus. And all I could hear was the soundtrack to the Titanic.
Really?
I felt this enormous experience of my whole life was about to go down. I'd just been hit with the ice. And until one experiences, I think, actually being diagnosed in that way, I actually had no idea the level of fear, of stress and depression that could emerge from that kind of diagnosis. The nature of what I did after that was another journey and perhaps another conversation, but so that really was my experience.
Now, did you have
took it
your
into me.
programs, Dancing with
Oh,
Wolves,
yeah.
going at that time?
I've been doing it for 15 years.
Ah,
So I'd
okay.
spent 15 years working with adults and working with children too. The tree's moving. Hi.
Okay, we
Welcome.
have a little spirit. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
So I spent 15 intense years. I mean, in England, I should work in hospitals as well.
I don't think
In
it's
England,
showed on the
It's
camera.
a
England.
spirit.
In England, I worked in the hospice as well. And then
Oh, boy.
the nature of this work also is that what it does, it allows you to feel free. And humor and laughter, for me, that's what you see in the workbooks. There are jokes, and people actually like humor and laughter. So this is beautiful. This is actually part of what this is all about.
Right.
But for 15 years, I worked with cancer patients, and I also volunteered years ago in hospice. And I spent a lot of time in that field. However, until you're in that situation and you hear those words, you have no idea what it's like, and it's very individual for everybody who hears it. So that experience 10 years ago completely transformed my approach to my life. I'd been fairly observant in how I progressed my life, but the whole nature of like a zoom lens, you take it down and you begin to experience cancer on a whole new level, and that's really been informing and empowering my work since that day.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about it, like, you know, how you treat it and so forth, but you say that maybe you do another show with that? Then?
Well, I'd like to focus on the adult work today. I think there's a lot that we can talk about.
Okay,
then
and
at
I'm
some
sure
point,
our audience would really love to hear your
Right.
story, so we'll have to do that. All right.
Okay, how about this one? It is more common for men to do woodworking. Why do you think DWW, Dancing with, I'm going to get it right this time, wood, is a value for men with cancer?
Well, woodworking is probably culturally more of an accepted thing for men, but it's a great activity. However, when you then take it into another setting, so for example, I had a patient, he was about 60, he was an inpatient, so I want to show you where the different programs used. And he was of Eastern descent, I think, and he couldn't speak very good English, only his wife could really communicate with him. So he was in for an extended period. And he was depressed, he was quiet, didn't really communicate, but he couldn't communicate very much. So he wanted to build something for his grandson. So he started to build a fire truck, a beautiful fire truck. And every day he would build this truck, he would paint it, he would work on it. And his whole demeanor shifted. And as the nurses went in, they would watch him creating. They had no idea he had this creativity inside him. So over the period of about 6 to 7 days, this process took him from a very depressed adult in a hospital room with a lot of uncertainty to a very expressive, he was smiling a lot, he was happy, he was out of his bed, painting wheels, and showing pictures of his grandson. So the experience of this for a patient, inpatient, who's alone for a lot of time in his hospital bed, became very empowering. And it also helped the staff as well, because it gave them a focal point. And they could see the evolution of this project. So that's one example. Another example, I did a program for men with prostate cancer. We had about 15 men, came to an evening session. It's about an hour and a half in a hospital. A nurse was there, a wonderful nurse. We had coffee and donuts, and we had this beautiful, comfortable setting. But we billed it as woodworking, because it isn't sort of such a good thing to say, you know, come to a sharing meeting or a dream meeting. No, it isn't quite the language, which I respect too, because that's not really, you know, something that attracts me. So we said it would be a dream box. So they came, 3 of them brought their wives and the other men were there by themselves. And for about 30-35 minutes, they had a great time. They were building, they were chatting, they were sharing and helping each other. And then at the end of that, they came to a point where all the boxes were built. So then my question was, so what are your dreams? Absolute silence. Absolute silence. Completely the reverse from the group of women who had breast cancer. They were invited and they came out and shared it. Yeah. Absolute silence.
That's a man thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should have called it a bucket box or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the name wasn't correct. But at any rate, the experience is really interesting. So here we were in the room, and this wonderful nurse is looking at me. I'm looking at her going,
oh boy,
okay,
it's going to be a tough crowd.
This is going to be a long night. And so I'm listening here, and no eye contact. Everybody's looking down, which I really respect, because sometimes when you are in that situation, you know, it isn't a question of easily saying, oh, I have these dreams. It's not always that way. So one of the men I engaged eventually, and looked at him and said, you know, what's going on for you? And he looked pretty despondent. He said, I don't have any dreams, he said. I just want to get through this. But that's his dream. And I totally respect that. So let's work with that. So great, you want to get through this. And what would help you get through it? And he sat for a while and he thought, and he said, well, I'm a bit overweight. I'd like to lose some weight. But he said, quite honestly, the diet books are so confusing and messages about diet, I'm not sure what to do with it. So I said, well, what would help you? He said, well, I don't want any more books. I'm not sure what to do. And in the hospital, there was a nutritionist that was provided free of charge to the patients that nobody knew about. So then we decided that what he'd like to do, I said, well, actually talking to somebody help you who's a nutritionist. He said, yeah, that'd be a great help, but I can't afford that kind of thing. Well, you don't have to pay for it because it's provided. So what we established for him was that his aim, dream if you like, in the next week was actually go and spend time with a nutritionist for an hour to start him on his journey to lose weight. And that was his journey. So here is woodworking that allows this process to come through, where you use it as a tool to really help people communicate. So it's, whilst it is woodworking, there's so many more layers to this, the sociability, the communication, and then when you invite those other aspects of the program into it, such as what are your hopes, what are your dreams, you invite them then to share that. So that there's a couple of examples of how the program has worked for both men and women.
Did you find it hard to get the men to open up, all the men? I mean, I know this one particular, but they were all like that? They were hard to open up to you, or?
Well, I think in that situation, they're guarded sometimes, and it's natural when you're in a hospital environment to be withdrawn. I certainly was. And you don't tend to have the same invitation for sociability as you usually do. So I wouldn't say hard, I think respectfully, there was a quietness there.
Well,
and
men don't like to let their emotions out. They don't like to talk about their emotions and so forth, right? I mean, as a rule.
They have a different process from women, and they tend to find other ways to communicate that. And conversation initially isn't one of their better vehicles, especially in a hospital setting.
So why do you think the Dances with Wood program benefits women with breast cancer?
Well, the primary two reasons that the examples I gave you of what happened to the woman who was actually using the program in a clinic situation, and she was in for a treatment for several hours. You know, because I think when you look at cancer, you really have to understand that, from my perspective, cancer is obviously a critical physical condition that you need to respond to. However, with for example, if it's a tumor, what will also come, what I call three family members. You have stress, you have fear, and you have depression. They're like parachutists that come into your life that really take over and start then diminishing your own ability to respond to the treatment. Essentially, your immune system can be compromised. And so I think when you understand that those three conditions alone debilitate and optimize, I think, the progression of cancer, then what you're looking at doing by providing a program of this nature, not simply addressing in the individual in terms of giving them a good time or making them feel creative. What you're actually affecting is the physiology in their whole body through the creation of positive emotions and positive feelings. And in many ways, whilst you may have extreme stress and fear, and then often even the treatment sometimes, it can lead you to be lightly depressed and sometimes heavily depressed. That's the nature of the illness. So when you look at those three conditions, it isn't so much that you have to focus on them, but you focus in that which is inside of them to do with the human spirit. So if you have a dark room and you light a candle, the light displaces the darkness. And I think it's the same with this program, that what it seeks to do is engage in you that thing inside you, which is beautiful, which is radiant, which is in all adults, all children. And it gives you the invitation to actually engage in that and bring it into the world. And in the process of doing that, you don't feel fear, the depression eases, and the stress eases too. The example of that has been with that woman who built a box in a clinic undergoing chemotherapy. She forgot she was in hospital. She felt free in the middle of chemotherapy. And I think that's part of the important equation here, that what we're dealing with is not so much a random approach to creativity and health and healing. The key here is, I think, to support every aspect of medical care with whatever we can do to promote the health of the spirit. And part of the design of this program is to really carry this work bedside and into the clinics, into the places where patients most experience discomfort, most experience fear, and often experience depression. And over the years, that's always been one of the aims of this program, because that's the place where, when you experience fear, that's the place and that's the time when you want to feel that power within you. And that experience is what this program helps an individual to experience.
Women received it well. I mean, women don't usually work with wood.
Yeah, it was.
You know?
It was an unusual one. So, but they were fun and they were adventurous.
Good.
And
there was painting involved too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Which is-
women like to do that.
Art is beautiful. I mean, art is such a wonderful part of this work too.
Now, the adult projects, are they all sanded like the children's are,
Yeah.
or do the adults get to
No.
sand? Because sanding
No.
can be kind of...
I don't think
in a
you
hospital
can
environment,
hospital,
no.
Oh, that's right. That's
You
right.
know, the other thing to remember that this program is it has a very high standard of production in terms of the actual pieces of wood and the materials. So everything is very sanded to a high degree, hand vacuumed, hand cleaned, packaged very carefully. It has to be able to function in a hospital environment.
Okay.
Wow. Alrighty. Put my glasses on. Where do we leave off, Missy? Okay. Many of our viewers are interested in navigating life in the direction of their soul's purpose. Can you please share with us some of your own experiences in life that have helped you to bring you to this work?
In terms of navigating your life, I think there are a number of things that one has to pay attention to that I did. You know, my own nature, I wanted to understand what my nature was. You know, my father and my mother had different natures. My mother, for example, was a nurse, and she nursed in the Second World War, drove ambulances, so she always had a very caring spirit. My father was in the RAF, and he didn't have that kind of approach to life, but I was blessed with my mother's spirit. So I always had that attraction to the fields of care, and I've always felt very comfortable in hospitals. However, I don't do body fluids in any way, shape or form. So I think as you're navigating your life, you have to listen for what the things are inside you that are important to you. And I think being in the field of care was important. And then going through life, you have to listen for what it is you love to do. And woodworking was always a part of my life, all the way through since I can remember.
Now, did you do woodworking as a profession at
Yeah,
one point?
I actually trained as a cabinet maker for 4 years, did a City and Guilds of London Institute, examination, did intermediate and final examinations. So I spent probably part-time over 6 or 7 years at college just doing the furniture industry, cabinet making, and wood carving.
Oh, wow.
So I was steeped in the training from a very early age. And then your life takes over with different experiences that come along. And as you navigate your life, you pay attention to what occurs. So for example, when I was 20, I had the invitation to become an industrial engineer. And the company I was working for were going to train me. And so I finished my training. I thought, well, industrial engineer. I couldn't say that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but it was an invitation that came along. And I thought I would do that. So for about 4 years, I got trained and functioned as an industrial engineer, which means you create incentive schemes, you study people, you look at the ergonomics of a shop floor, you look at efficiency, and you capture how processes are done. Then you have to put an incentive scheme against it. So it's very detailed observation of a workforce. So at the end of about 4 years, it was done. I was ready to move on. And I thought, well, why did I ever do that for 4 years? It's like, I really don't want to be an industrial engineer. So fast forward over 20 years, and I'm sitting bedside with a child in a hospital, and I'm watching their movements. Once I walk out, and within a day, I can put together a 40-page workbook, step by step,
Really?
that a child can build in exactly the right process for the ergonomics, for the weight and hand distribution, for the reach and everything else, in steps, time-wise, that make it very accessible for a child. It took me 20 years to realize why I become an industrial engineer back then.
Wow.
Part of the navigational process, I think, is trusting that sometimes you will go through experiences in your life which may or may not at the time make a lot of sense in the big scheme of things. But sometimes later in life, you see things like joining the dots. You begin to see a picture emerge. And it took me 20 years to realize why I'd been an industrial engineer 20 years before.
Yeah.
And there's no other skill that could have given me that. And here I am now. I produce 30, 40-page workbooks at the drop of a hat because of that experience 20 years ago. That's one example. And then 15, 16 years ago, I'm working with the special needs young people, and because I played a lot of sport when I was young, I played a lot of rugby and soccer, I started playing sports with these young handicapped adults with whom I worked. And they used to get kicked and bumped, so they'd come to me for some liniment, because that's what the physio did for me. So then I wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing, so I trained as a massage therapist. Did a 9-month training.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe, I've got big hands, so I thought, well, maybe that's my work on this plane, is to really work in that field. I like the caring, I have good hands because they're strong through woodworking. Thought massage therapist, and the young people got a lot of value from it. So I did a 9-month training, got qualified. Then I realized I didn't actually want to be a massage therapist. So here I am as a massage therapist. Fast forward a couple of years later, I go to work in a place in England called the Cancer Help Centre. This is a residential program for people with cancer in England, maybe 10 to 11 patients at a time. They come for a week. They have conventional doctors there, they have therapists, they have art therapists, they have counselors, they have a wonderful program of a wide range of healing modalities. And I used to go there and work in the evenings. I had the role as I did a relaxation evening for the patients. They asked me to do foot massage. So I'd get
my favorite thing.
I'd get 10 patients in a room, and I would then show them an example of how to do foot massage, and I'd put them in pairs. And they would spend time. This isn't deep tissue, it's not heavy manipulation, it's foot love, foot care. And I would play music, I would do guided imagery with them. So here I am now, sharing this skill that I learned 2 years before as a massage therapist with these cancer patients. And then the other thing that occurred was I was also what they call the night duty person, and I would support the night nurse who was on call all through the night. I'd answer the telephones. So I'd sit up to the early hours answering the phone. And often the patients wouldn't be able to sleep. So they'd come down just to chat. And many of the women who came down had breast cancer. And I listened to amazing stories from these beautiful women. So then fast forward 10 years, and I'm walking back into the hospital to work with breast cancer patients. So looking at your life with a series of experiences as it goes through, you can see, oh, that's it, and bit by bit this shape emerges.
It's like connecting the dots.
There was an experience about 7 years ago. I was sitting in a big hospital atrium talking to a drug rep about potential funding for the program. And halfway through this drug rep, she was a lovely lady, a mother of 3, she stopped me in my tracks because I was trying to get funding for the Dances with Wood program for the pediatric oncology. She stopped me in my tracks and she said, Woody, she said, why do you only work with kids? It's like, okay, what exactly? She said, there's another group of people who need this work. She had women with breast cancer. It's like, and I can remember that so vividly. It took about 3 seconds to say that. But I always carried that as a thought, that that was a sign to me to pay attention. And then some years later, I'm coming back to this work again. So I think navigating is partly trying to work out your own direction, but also paying attention to the things that occur.
Right.
And not getting too fixated on an existing model of how something is manifested. Because I think in this day and age, it's a really exciting time, and people are allowed more creativity and individuality to initiate new things. And I think at this time and age too, I think we're looking for and we're ready for new initiatives in the field of healing.
Yes.
And how we collaborate, how we bring together many of the wonderful forms that are out there and really collaborate. So those are some of the, some of the key points that have happened through my life that began many, many years ago, that have come together. It's taken a long time for me to see the things start emerging, but it's weaving threads into a tapestry. And the process, I think, is trusting. As you do something, when it finishes its cycle, whether it's a few weeks, a few months, or a few years, you may not get a quick response as to why did I do that. I was a sales and marketing manager for 2 years in the corporate world. I only did that because the chairman of the soccer club I played for had a large company, and he wanted to start a new business up. So it's like, okay, I'll come and do that. For 2 years, I wore a suit for every day of the week, had a company car, and there were all BMWs outside. And it was like, what am I doing here? But I was gathering so much valuable experience. I learned wonderful wisdom from the corporate world, business disciplines, which later have been very valuable to me. But at the end of it, I thought, wow, what am I doing this for? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. But again, the journey, I think, in life is a gathering and a holding and a maturation as you go through life, as the bits start to form. And I think in this day and age, too, that we have invitations to create things that perhaps haven't been created before. The Dances with Wood is, if you'd have told me I was going to be doing this 20 years ago, you must be nuts. Woodworking in a hospital? Where does that begin? What, did I get dropped on my head as a child? You know? Now the program has reached over 17,000, 18,000 children and adults. It's been used in over 20 states.
Wow. How many different hospitals?
There's probably about 9 or 10 hospitals. No, there's 17, it's about 17, 12, 17 hospitals. And there's over 23 states now. Because I also do programs for healthcare education, hemophilia. And that's used in summer camps where we train children how to take care of their... I think the tree just passed out.
The audience didn't see that, but one of our trees fell over. There's a spirit, there's a frivolous spirit in here tonight.
Does anybody know CPR?
Nobody's even touching it.
CPR for a tree?
Yeah, just passed out this tree.
Poor thing.
You could say
I'm glad that tree tipped over. That was the one I hated.
You could say the tree is leafing us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's leaf us
Oh, leafing.
leave us alone.
Leafing us.
That almost might make the wood book.
Oh my.
But
Yeah, that definitely needs to make the wood book.
it just goes to show people that you got to let life lead you once in a while to different things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And just see where it goes. There's a movie called Yes. You got to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to leave, you know, in your heart, like you left the job a long time ago. You may have gotten let go. You may have gotten laid off. And something may happen. I mean, you just quit. But in your heart, you knew that you have finished with that job and it's time to move on. And when you know that, the next thing will come along. Right?
I've had friends who have not listened for when the time is right to leave. And eventually they get cranky at work, they get depressed at work, and they start arguing with people at work, they get grumpy, and then they end up getting fired.
That's right.
And then 3 months later, they'll say, wow, I was hurt at the time, but that's the best thing that could have happened to me. So sometimes if you don't pay attention at the right time, the good thing is it won't let you go. But however, the longer you ignore it, the impact that it will take to get you out, maybe more than you think you deserve.
Right. And you may not have left on a good terms when you did it that way, you know.
Exactly.
So it's better to, when you know, and just say, okay, I really know that this is what I want to do.
That's wisdom, yeah.
Yep. Many of our viewers are interested in navigating life in the direction of their soul's purpose. Yeah, you did read that, didn't you?
did.
Right. When we first met you, you shared with me your vision for a healing center called Oak Farm. Would you share this vision with our viewers and what the healing center will do?
Well, the Oak Farm vision is something that represents a bit of a paradigm shift, I think, in how we view cancer. And the nature of having a vision, which is a farm, is a form of container where this will allow us to bring together some new innovative healing modalities, especially with woodworking. So what I'm working on is like a pharmacy of wooden processes and projects that can be used for people with cancer. For example, you take some pieces of wood and you build them into something like this, which is a drum. And I think
It's a drum.
I think we have many examples of the power of drum. So the question then is, how can a drum come into the healing work for somebody? So say, for example, I have a low cell count. I need to up my white T cells, for example. And there are great visualizations out there that help you. And visualization takes you so far, but then the invitation is, how do you deepen that into your energy field, into your aura, into every cell that's listening to your body?
Right.
So you take a simple drum, and then one example of this is one of the new programs I'm working on. Then, for example, you paint it red.
I like it's got a little handle on it and everything.
So in a way, I paint the red as a symbol for my blood. And then each day, in the morning, for maybe 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes at night, maybe 2 minutes midday, I take some white paint and I put 2 or 3 dabs of white paint on the drum. So what I'm doing, I'm not only visualizing my white T cell count in my body increasing, I'm actually seeing it, I'm painting it, I'm feeling it substantially with this energy. And then as I have the white dots representing my T cells, for a few seconds or a few minutes in the morning, I tap out a simple rhythm. If you can count to 6, you can play a drum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I attach to the visualization sound, which carries it inside my body. Then if you want to use a mantra or a word to carry power as well, you can attach a word to it. White T cells, growing cells, growing cells. You create your own healing journey utilizing several of the actual things that used to be done separately. So you do visualizing, you use sound. Then you can use olfactory, you get a special scent, and whilst you're playing this for just a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes at night, you put in the olfactory scent and attach that to it. So what you're trying to do is change your energy field. Not just doing it once, you do it through the day. Because essentially, an illness like cancer isn't something that just comes and goes. It's an extended journey. And so anything you do vibrationally to affect the healing process, I think, needs to have endurance energetically so it can permeate and steep into your body, into your energy field. Because as we know now, the more than ever, every cell in your body is listening to everything you do. And it's paying attention. So the messages you send in that are positive will get that effect on your immune system, and the messages that go in that are negative have the same effect too. It's actually hard sometimes to sit and try and meditate or to really work with the mind, because the mind can be very attached to things like fear, uncertainty, stress, and depression. So having something that you actually use your hands with, you engage your will force, you make sound, is a distraction, but it also carries a way of allowing you to focus your intention right into the drum. And there's a quick story that exemplifies the relationship that every cell in your body has to words and to gestures. When I was 22 as an industrial engineer, I had to go out and do time studies on people. I'd stand over them with a clock and write down what they were doing.
Really?
This is a factory of 500 men, and there were 8 women in the factory, and they worked in the upholstery department. And they did all the sewing of the covers. So the day came, I had to go to the upholstery department to do a study. So I walked in, I had the white coat, and I had a board and a clock. And so there were 8 women there, and they were playful women. And so I had to do a study. So the first day was very quiet, and they were all kind of quiet and watching me. And these had a great sense of humor, so I knew there was something cooking. So the second day I went in, and the lady I had to study, she was young, and she put makeup on. So I'm stood there, Mr. Serious, in my white coat doing my time study, and she looks up at me and winks and goes like that. Within seconds, I was bright red. I was burning hot. I was so embarrassed.
Oh.
But look at what one gesture did to my whole physiology, not even a word.
Yeah.
That one gesture changed my blood matriculation within my body, and every cell in my body was beaming bright red without even a word. So you wonder what the effect of sound is, of a word, of a mantra, of a positive thought, of a good word, a kind word. That's an example of how that one gesture made me, I was like a beetroot. Then one of the ladies, she looked up and she smiled and said, "Oh look, Bob's embarrassed." The volume of that embarrassment went up 30 levels. I am stood there with these 8 women who are guffawing at me, and I am guffawing as well. They nailed me. But the message behind this, not even a word was spoken. My complete physiology, my blood heart rate was affected by just a gesture that lasted probably less than 2 seconds. You reverse engineer that and start utilizing that process to put into your energy field the information you want, the sound you want, the pictures you want, and you bring them together into a process that's fun to do. 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night, maybe lunchtime for a few minutes. Then through the day, you put that little sound on the tape and you play it in the car. You take the scent, the olfactory scent, and every now and then you take a little sniff, and you're reaffirming those messages, that visualization, and you're seeing, feeling, and believing that your white T cell count is growing in your body. And I believe that every cell in your body is saying, okay, now what? Years ago, the old story of the ulcer. You know, the picture I had years ago was the stressed businessman who worried so much he got an ulcer. And I think people have seen that correlation, that if you carry stress, it can manifest perhaps in an ulcer. So why can't we reverse engineer that? If we can take stress to create that, why can't we reverse the process and understand that the power of our thoughts with processes, with established ways of doing this, can really give you and each individual a very powerful healing modality based on their curriculum, based on what they feel is right for them. And the drum is one example. You know, I've used this with kids. I had 2 boys once. They built drums in a hospital bed. And I just after I went in the room, the nurse came in to draw blood. And that's one of the things that I knew this nurse really dreaded, because it was hard sometimes to find the veins in the arm. So when she saw me in this, she said, "Well, I'll come back. I don't need to do it now. Let me come back. Let them have a good time first. So we built the drums and we created a song with her name. Like Jennifer, 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 Jennifer. So the two boys were playing their drums, they made music, and they were singing her song, singing her voice, singing her name as she walked in. As she walked in, she was immediately, obviously come to do a stressful thing. The whole energy in the room transformed. Everything changed. And so the power then of you creating your music, your words, your song in that environment is transformative to the whole process. And it helps the staff as well because they have such a difficult job sometimes.
Yes.
And that's part of it too. So going back to the question of Oak Farm, that represents sort of a container. Within the container will be programs of this nature that I'm working on now. And there's another project which gives you another example of how I'm working. So the question then is, how can you take a piece of wood?
Want me to hold anything?
I'm good. So, well, how can you use this in the healing process? Well, one of the things that people do often do, they use art to capture a picture of their cancer, which is a beautiful way to start communicating with it. But the challenge with art is it's one-dimensional usually. And cancer usually, in most cases, exception with blood, often it's a tumor, it's a form, it's a three-dimensional. So the body knows this. So what we then do, we take the piece of wood, and for me, say, for example, what's the color of my cancer? And I would say, well, say it's black. So I paint the piece of wood black. So then what you do with it? Well, then what I want to do is engage my will force. And I use simple hand tools with this. A hand file, such as that, a very safe, simple saw. And over the period of 30 or 40 days, in the morning, in the evening, 5-10 minutes at a time, you start removing the wood. And that goes to that. And what you're essentially doing, you're reverse engineering the metaphor for a tumor. Mm-hmm. And what I'm ultimately going to end up doing is return that block of wood to sawdust. So essentially, the message that I'm sending through my body to the tumor, because I'm in communication with it now, I'm sending with my will force over an extended period the reverse engineering of the cells that came together to create the tumor. But the difference with this is that what you're doing, you're not actually, for me, I wouldn't be doing this with aggression or with anger. This becomes art. So the process of healing, that tumor, for example, transitions into art. So this becomes a form of sculpture. Mm-hmm. And so the art truly heals. And as you shape the wood, as you diminish the block and reduce it back to sawdust, you begin to relive the re-engineered version of what created that in the first place. And that's the message you send to every cell in your body. Even if you could prove that nothing other than occurred from this than the fact it takes your mind off and stops negativity, it stops stress, stops depression, and removes fear. Because you're so engaged in an artistic, creative process. You go back to that woman who spent an hour and a half on chemotherapy, who looked at me and said, I was free. I wasn't in a hospital.
Right.
And so what you experience is your beauty, your health, and your vitality as you use art to reinform the whole process, as you claim your power over, and then you talk about, okay, these are the cells now, this is the sawdust. What do you want to do with this? Do you want to take it to the ocean? Do you want to bury it? This is your process. Mm-hmm. So the program would really be centered around this kind of program.
All right, we have about 4 minutes left. Now, I want the audience to understand this. You want to build a healing center. That's what you want to have. You want like a piece of land and build this healing center called Oak Farm, right?
The vision is to create Oak Farm. It's an organic farm with animals, horses, a center where you can actually have training conferences, a residential center where patients can come and receive this new cutting-edge program. Also where medical professionals can come to be together, to share, to support, and for them to actually receive some of these modalities of energy healing, things like that. So it represents a center where a collaboration can occur, where all the healing arts can come into one form, and then we can collaboratively start looking at what these programs could be represented as in the hospital environment, or at home, and in the community.
All right, so you don't have the land yet, right?
No, I'm building the vision.
You're building the vision.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need the
And
land.
you want
then
this
you want
to be in Connecticut?
Wherever it needs to be.
Okay,
Wherever it
and then
needs
you're
to.
build. Then you want to build the building and have this
Yeah.
like a holistic and
Yeah.
everything that has to do with healing, right? That's your vision.
Healing, wholeness, and really helping everybody who's engaged in the healing arts to really come together and
Yeah.
to really receive.
That would be
the
really
benefit.
nice. All the different people who
Right.
do all the different creative things to come
Right.
together and work with these people.
So that's the hope, to help build that vision. And essentially it's a group of people who come together with a heart full of love and a desire to build something beautiful.
Yeah.
I think the time's coming.
It sounds wonderful.
The time is here.
You have all kinds of healing, holistic, nutrition, and then some regular allopathic physicians, all the creative people. That sounds really, really beautiful.
And medical professionals should be cared for too.
Yeah, that's what I say, yeah.
Physicians, nurses, social
Yeah,
workers, they work
allopathic,
so
yeah.
hard. They do so many difficult jobs out there that they need care too.
Yeah.
And so this would be a center where we could really give everybody an invitation to find out for themselves the power of the healing arts, and then find ways that we can re-engineer to take this program and this kind of work into the setting where patients have to deal with it.
Well, that's his dream. That's Woody's dream. And if anyone can help him make this dream come true or want to participate in this dream, get a hold of Woody. We're going to give you his contact information because it is time to close the show. Can you believe it? Already an hour. To contact Woody, its website is www.danceswithwood.org. And his email is woody@danceswithwood.org. And he'll be excited to hear from you. To learn more information about this show or any of our past shows, please contact us at healoutsidethebox@yahoo.com. Or to reach me, Rosemary Lachance, my phone number is 203-627-7966, or you can visit my website at www.rosemarylachance.com.
My phone number is 860-664-0174, and my email address is jaynepower@hotmail.com.
We are also on Facebook under Healing Outside the Box. And our quote for tonight is, "The simple recognition that everyone else wants to be happy and not to suffer, just as I do, serves as a constant reminder against selfishness and partiality. It reminds us there is little to be gained from being kind and generous while hoping to win something in return. Actions motivated by a desire to earn a good name for ourselves are still selfish, even if they appear to be acts of kindness." That's from the Dalai Lama. So we can do all kinds of good work. The question is, what is our motivation? What is our intention? And I know your intention is fantastic. So I hope we'll see you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye, Woody.
Thank you, Woody.
Real pleasure.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Yeah. See what you do to the tree.
As you look out through the window to the world you have made, always know you are the vision. See the truth, darkness fade.